drafting year. So the best drafting year so far has been 2010. The worst drafting year has been 2002, with all those other draft years in between. And so far, I've excluded 2008 to 2021. I did factor that into the actual model. I haven't put them here because I want to make sure they give at least a couple more years for 2008 players to start making some Pro Bowls as they continue to develop in the league. Okay, so best drafting year, 2010. Just had a lot of great players top to bottom. So, for the most part, you're looking at about 35 players that each draft are going to make a Pro Bowl in their career. This case goes over 40 for 2010. Good players, Joe McCoy. We got Gronk, Eric Berry, Earl Thomas. Some really good players in that draft year to really round it out. Not so good draft years, 2002. You had Wendell Bryant, Matt Schwab, Ryan Sims, Joey Harrington, all players near the Pro Bowl. They were definitely drafted very high. So in certain cases, if you were drafted in 2002, you didn't make the Pro Bowl, your team was not penalized in my model for drafting you in that particular year. All right. So here's the part where I think everybody really wants to know. Where are your busts? What are your busts, and what do you think? So here are the top 10 busts of all positions based upon my logistical regression model. And you say that to say, look, I realize in building this that, everyone's going to have an opinion on, well, who was a draft bust? What is even a draft bust? So I have defined a draft bust, as I mentioned earlier, as a player that was drafted that did not make it to a Pro Bowl. So I would say a successful draft pick would be one that was drafted by a team and made a Pro Bowl. Now, in this particular case, the player, I did not examine players that were drafted by one team and then were subsequently traded and made a Pro Bowl with another team as being a bad pick. I only looked at players who were drafted by a team and never made a Pro Bowl. So here we go. Top 10, Bobby Carpenter, linebacker at Ohio State. Number 9, A.J. Hike, linebacker at Ohio State. Number 8, Rashard Mendenhall, running back at Illinois. Number 7, Marcus Spears, defensive end at LSU. And number 6, Felix Jones, running back out of Arkansas. So you can see, at 10, we've got linebackers. And Carpenter, he was the number 18 pick. A.J. Hawk was number 5 pick. They were linebackers. Linebackers are generally not selected when the top 5 picks. Just the fact that generally those are going to be some really skilled players. When I say skilled players, like cornerbacks, quarterbacks, and others. So when a player gets selected that high and they don't make the Pro Bowl, then it's really going to affect them in the model. And then Rashard Mendenhall, he was number 23rd pick, and he went to the Steelers in 2008, strong year. He didn't make it. We'll talk about it a little bit later. And then Felix Jones out of Arkansas, number 22 pick. Also, you can see here the Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Pittsburgh Steelers, overall 3 quality NFL teams. So whenever one of these teams tends to whiff on a player, then they're going to end up on my list according to logistic regression. So moving right along, let's look at the top 5 players. So we've got Tyson Jackson on our left, and we got David Tyrrell on our right. So Tyson Jackson, he spent 5 years at Kansas City. He had 9 sacks in 5 years. So you can clearly see the fact that, he was the number 3 pick in 2009 and only came up with 9 sacks in 5 years. So he clearly would fit the definition of what someone say would be a bust. And we've got David Tyrrell. He got 128 receptions, 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns in 4 years. Now you do have players who've got 1,600 yards in 1 year. The receptions are fairly high, looking like 30 or so. So he was fairly productive reception-wise, but just not for the number 8 pick in the draft. So clearly there was a lot of other players that they could have taken instead. So probably pretty solid is calling these 5 and 4 busts. All right. Of course, they didn't make the Pro Bowl, right? So that's what my definition of bust was. Okay, here we go. 3 and 2. So we got 3. We got Morris Claiborne, and 2. We got Cedric Benson. Let's go ahead and start with Claiborne. So 2012 draft year, very interesting draft year. We'll talk about it a little bit later. He was a quarterback, LSU, number 6 overall pick. He had 151 tackles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 4 interceptions with the Cowboys before leaving the Cowboys. And as you can tell, that's probably not what the Cowboys wanted with the number 6 pick in the 2012 draft. So definitely, he probably definitely deserves one on this list. Although he did have a fairly big career. Cedric Benson, first of all, I'm going to say, hey, rest in peace. He did die in a motorcycle accident. He was a number 4 overall pick from the Chicago Bears. He had 1,593 rushing yards, 180 receiving yards in 3 seasons with the Bears. So definitely not what they were looking for with that pick being that high. Definitely looking for someone better. And again, the model itself is penalizing him for the fact that they took a running back that high, because our model basically states that with the coefficient announcement, look a little bit later, if you're a running back, you're drafted high, you really should be a Pro Bowler because of the fact that there's a lot of running backs who are drafted much lower, who we'll see that are making the Pro Bowl. Okay, on to our number 1 pick. I know people have been wondering who could it be. And it might surprise you, but here we go. Number 1 pick, overall bust, Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush. So I know some people are going to say, hey, I can't believe you're saying this. But let me go ahead and make the case based upon the logistical regression and some of the actual stats. I'm going to marry the two. So yeah, overall number 1 bust, you got Reggie Bush, 2,000 receiving yards, 2,100, actually 2,000 rushing should say actually rushing yards, 2,142 receiving yards, 720 punt return yards, no Pro Bowls. And as I mentioned, he was a number 2 overall pick in the 2006 draft by the Saints. So let's take a look at some of the other picks that we had to go. We had Mario Williams, number 1, with the Houston Texans. He had 4 Pro Bowls. We had Vince Young at 3. He had 2. Brickshaw Ferguson, great tackle for the Jets. He had 3 Pro Bowls. Vernon Davis, the tight end. Donnie Winter, the safety. Jay Cutler had a Pro Bowl for the Broncos. Julio Ngata was 5 Pro Bowls as a D tackle. Chad Greenway, Antonio Cromartie, great cornerback. Tamba Ali, Davin Joseph, Jonathan Joseph, D'Angelo Williams, another running back pick, got a 27th pick. 25 picks later, had a Pro Bowl, as did Joseph Adai, another running back, and you got Mercedes Lewis and Nick Mangold. So really, some great players here. Nick Mangold had 7 Pro Bowls. So there was a lot of great players that were drafted after Reggie was, that did a lot, as well as a player drafted 1 above that made it to the Pro Bowl. Reggie didn't, so that's the reason why the model penalized him. Also, the fact that he was a running back, where we've seen a lot of running backs that are drafted in the first round, or even drafted, period, tend to make Pro Bowls. Unfortunately, it's one of the things we've seen with the football, where the running backs who are drafted, they tend to have a pretty higher expectation to succeed. And that's the reason why Reggie Bush was my number one bust. So due to my logistic regressional model, Reggie Bush is the number 1 overall bust since 2001. So from draft years 2001 to 2021, Reggie Bush, you are the overall number 1 bust. Okay, so people can definitely comment and tell me what you think. I'm definitely all ears. I want to hear it, and I wanted to get some feedback for this later. But we got more to go. So here we go. So I look at the accuracy of my model. So here's my top 25, what I call busts ranked by the model, right? Number 1 to 25. So as we can look, we go from left to right. We have the score yes over here. This means that the logistical model said, hey, no, at 0.8 score percentage says probably, hey, this person should be should be a Pro Bowler, right? So Reggie Bush, 0.8, wow, pretty high. And 25th was 0.57, or so 57%. And that's Santonio Holmes. So we got Reggie Bush. We mentioned Cedric Benson, Claiborne. We mentioned the top 10, 11, Mark Clayton, wide receiver for the Ravens. Cadillac Williams. We'll talk about him in just 1 second. Marcus Spears was mentioned. Mike Williams, 2017. So he's there right now. He's still playing. Leonard Fournette is still playing. So there's still a chance for some of these folks to make a Pro Bowl, not for the team they were drafted by. However, as I mentioned, if the player subsequently makes a Pro Bowl, I do remove them from this list, because if they make a Pro Bowl, they were a player not gonna account for it. Shard Mendenhall, Aaron Curry, we'll mention him later. Matt Leinart, Michael Floyd, Al Johnson, and Santonio Holmes. So out of all these players, I said there's 3 players that I was able to identify that should be removed because of their contribution so far. So Cadillac Williams, he had 6,000 total yards from scrimmage. Injuries were a factor.